Welcome back, listeners. We're rattling through the episodes. We're up to number 7 now. If you haven't listened to the back catalogue, which hopefully most of you have, but if you haven't, we've got 6 episodes out there at the moment available via our YouTube channel. So please feel free to have a look at those. There's some great content. Today, we are joined by a very special guest. We've had a lot of people tweeting in, asking, texting me to talk about this game, and I suppose it's difficult for me to give you too much information from my point of view because I wasn't there. But thankfully, I've got the guy who was. It's a game from back in 2010, and our guest today is Mike Smyth. How you doing, Smythy?
Yeah, not too bad, Letty. You?
I'm all right, mate. Yeah, not too bad. These podcasts are keeping me busy. For those of you out there wondering, it is currently April the 21st, so we're kind of recording all of these in advance, and hopefully 7 episodes in, we might be slightly lifted on restrictions. If not, hopefully this will kind of keep you going for a little bit longer. Smythe, you sort of got a bit of a background in pharmaceuticals and all that kind of stuff. Have you got any leads, mate? Any inside info that we could find out about?
No, not really, mate. If you're releasing one of these a month, then 7 might be enough to keep people till the end of lockdown, I guess.
Well, let's hope that by the time this episode goes out, everyone's out and you've been proved wrong. But we'll see. So, how you doing? Are you at home, furloughed, still working? What's the deal?
Yeah, mate. I'm working from home at the moment. I took a redundancy package. Probably October last year, so I only started in a new job in February this year.
Right.
So yeah, I don't think I'd even finished my training for the new role when we were all put into lockdown and just sort of working from home. So yeah, essentially I'm getting paid to sit at home and not do a great deal at the moment, which sounds great, but is actually really, really boring and frustrating.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think it's we won't talk too much about this, but hopefully everyone's bored to tears, and this is a thing of the past. But living in the moment that we are right now, obviously it's tough, it's frustrating not seeing family members and stuff, and as I said, hopefully we'll be out of it by then. But I don't know about you, mate, but I know a lot of people worse off than me, so trying to keep a bit of perspective.
Yep.
Trying to keep nice and positive. And with that in mind, let's talk some cricket. Michael Smyth, known by plenty of names over the years. Kenneth being one, which I still don't know if anybody else has ever called you it, and I can't remember why I started calling it, to be honest. But other names have come up. There was that one occasion that somebody referred to you as a Daniel Craig lookalike, which I still can't quite understand. If you listening out there have ever seen Mike Smyth,
definitely
have seen Daniel Craig, there's probably not too many that would make the connection. But that was 2011, that summer when you were getting married. Is that right?
I got married in Letty. Can we just say yes? I think it was 2010. Right. Yeah, no, I definitely won't send her the link.
Well, you got yourself into pretty good nick that summer, if I remember rightly.
Yeah. I mean, I spent a lot of time and money with Statey, and actually I did get into pretty good shape, which is, kind of when you put that Daniel Craig reference alongside the reference to tour down in, where was it, Sidmouth, when Lloydie was trying to tell the score of my name, and she was a bit hard of hearing, and after 3 or 4 attempts of saying Smythe, in the end she said, "Oh, well, I just put Tubby down."
It's unfortunate.
So for that summer I was known as Tubby.
If I remember rightly, that was on the night that we had the slip and slide on the outfield of the club. I can't remember
the Daniel Craig reference
on the outfield or where it came from. But mate, let's get into some cricket. So you came to Bath in 2006, is that right?
I think that's when I started playing cricket. Yeah, I'd been in Bath for a while before that, but from leaving university to coming here, I didn't really play cricket. Kind of fell out of love with the sport, really. For a couple of years, probably 3 or 4 years, I guess I didn't really play. And then James Brown's wife worked at London and Country, where I started to work, and she got me down to nets in 2006, I think it was, and yeah, started playing cricket again.
So you kind of hovered around, first team, second team for a while. Before you came to Bath, what sort of background did you have in cricket?
Well, I'm from originally down on the sort of Hampshire, Sussex, Surrey border, little village called Liphook. So that's sort of where I played my cricket as a kid. Played for Hampshire up until I was, I can't remember, 18, 19 maybe. And sort of once I stopped there, that's when I stopped playing cricket, really, because it got to a stage, I don't know whether it was ever the same for you, but cricket was very much a job, or something that you did because you were good at it, not because you enjoyed it and loved it and did it for those reasons. And I think once the whole Hampshire thing had finished, I moved away from home, didn't really know anyone in Bath, played a little bit at university, but yeah, after that just got out of the game, really.
Well, the game that we're going to talk about is from 2010, and in that period of a couple of years, we had a lot of success in the national. The year before, we got to the semi-finals under Thorby's leadership, but you didn't play much in that campaign, did you?
No, I had a slipped disc that year,
right.
So I didn't really play much that year at all, and I was listening to the thing you did with Kegsy on the Sully game in 2009, and I remember walking around that boundary during that game, and just the atmosphere there was crazy. Dom doing his ankle in the warm-up, and so that kind of put a little bit on the 2010 game, really, that I kind of felt like I'd missed that one the year before. So I kind of had a feeling of what the atmosphere would be like at their place, and was up for it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the first game paved the way, if you like, for the second one, because those of you that listen to that episode will know that it kind of ended in pretty dramatic fashion, both with sort of a glance at the rule book, and also, with the way that it ended, with Kegsy hitting the boundary in the last over, and everything that came with it. So we get to 2010, and we end up playing Sully again, this time at their place, and in the regional semi-final. So that's at this stage, we're at the last 64. And one thing that's come up quite a lot with other people that we've spoken to is that, when you're playing the earlier rounds of the national, you're still interested in it, but it's still a pipe dream, until you get down to the sort of last 16, when you get out of the regional stage. But this one had a bit more on it, didn't it?
It did, and I don't know whether you played the game before, but I think maybe the first or second round we played against Bristol West Indies.
Yeah.
At their place, and it's a game where Statey hit some runs and told their Stinky Quick to F off back to his run-up or something.
Yeah.
And then he waited for him after the game outside the changing room.
So out in someone's cricket bag.
Yeah, well, I remember there were 3 or 4 of us just in the change room, sat there with him, and he, I think we were all a little bit nervous, but so we'd had a good run, leading up to it, and there was already some good memories and atmosphere from that 2010 campaign.
And they came back with a really strong side. They had a very good side in 2009, but just looking down the scorecard here, we knew that the two sort of Bester brothers were kind of the backbone of their batting lineup. But then they had Mike O'Shea at 3, who was obviously a Glamorgan pro for a while. Actually played a bit of regional cricket with him, when we were younger, and obviously he was a very good cricketer. And Alex Wharf is also in this side, who on the day, I'm sure we'll get to, was bowling an interesting length from what I hear. So they came back at us with a good side. I mean, it's the first one of these episodes really where I don't have too much prior knowledge. I think the day that this game was played, I was unavailable because that was my day on the rota to be the lackey who runs drinks around the county ground for a whole afternoon. Something that I was prone to doing for the majority of my brief stint as a inverted commas professional cricketer. But it sounded from what the guys had told me that the ground, was sort of interesting to say the least. What can you tell me about the ground?
Yeah, from what I remember, and I mean, it's actually quite depressing. It was 10 years ago. It was actually a really hot day. And England had a game in the World Cup, and I remember turning up, and they already had quite a few people there, spectators there, and they had massive igloos, like those massive cool boxes and barbecues fired up, and you could tell that they were really up from it, and there was probably still some hangover, I guess, from the year before, like you said. So you definitely got the sense when you turned up that they had a big crowd, they were up for it, and it could get a bit feisty.
And it says here that Sully won the toss, chose to bat, which kind of sounds about right. I mean, in the bigger national games, you always kind of feel like you want to have runs on.
Yeah, and I mean it was quite an interesting deck actually, because it was really hot and sunny, and the deck looked quite good. And I don't think March he played in that game for us, did he? I don't know if you've got the scorecard there.
He's on the side.
So I think we mainly turned up with a seam attack, which, I mean, you think of the seamers we had, we were never really struggling, were we, with AK and Dorgs and Statey, and I think Brownie was in there as well, because I remember batting with him at the end. So I mean, we had a brilliant bowling lineup, but seam didn't really seem to work on that deck. I think it was just a bit too dry and dusty.
It's interesting because I've got the scorecard here in front of me, and the spinner obviously on the day was Stu Kingwell, and I guess that would have been a purpose selection in terms of we needed an off spinner, because Stewie was very, very good at what he did, in terms of holding up an end of twos, but didn't really get too many opportunities in the one. So I guess him being the only spinner kind of put a lot of pressure on him probably, but then also that seam attack. It's by the seaside, isn't it? The ground there.
It's right on the sea. Yeah.
And so first impressions in terms of what a decent score would be if you're the team batting first.
I think from what I remember when we went out to have a look, I think there was a bit of nervousness because you could see it was a bit of a dusty one, and we didn't have Marchie.
Mm.
And I think I remember thinking around about 180, 200 would be good, because those were in the days when 200 or 45 overs was, a pretty decent score, wasn't it? It's not.
Well, pressure as well of a chase, game. Definitely.
Yeah.
So we've got, obviously looking at the scorecard here, it seems like they sort of made fairly steady progress all the way through. And then, the number 9 takes it away from you a little bit at the end. What do you remember about him?
Yeah, I think, I mean, me, I was never a fan of fielding. I'd always try and find something to occupy my time and take my mind off it, because it was so mind-numbingly boring a lot of the time. But I just remember that day being very hot, chasing leather a lot, seeing people like Lloydie and AK getting hit all over the place. And even, I don't know what Brownie's bowling figures were, but I think he came on and sort of just tightened it up a little bit, as he always did. But yeah, that number 9 then, sort of came in at the end. We thought we had sort of brought it back in a bit, and then he just he had a bit of luck, threw his arms at it a bit. It's one of those things where sometimes those guys come in, and I remember Thorby doing it. Most of the time he'd try it and it'd be back in hutch within 2 balls. I think there was once when I saw him score quite a few. So it's one of those kind of innings, really.
Yeah, so I mean, it looks like JB is a key role here. He's the standout figures with 2 for 35 off 9. On a hot day with quick outfield and all the rest of it. He's just the sort of bloke you want, really. His name's come up over and over again on this podcast, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
But another invaluable stint. So you're chasing 227 to win the game, which, I guess now in 2020, it doesn't seem like, a particularly difficult chase. But, you got 10 years ago, I mean, club cricket's always been, probably 5-10 years behind professional cricket anyway, hasn't it? I mean, if you're batting first in a league game now and you get 230, 240, you think you can have enough most of the time, don't you?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it. Were we still playing time cricket in 2010?
Yeah, we were playing the 55 over stuff.
Yeah. So I think, and that really didn't help, because I remember so many games where, that was the time, like you said at the start, we were dominant. I think my first 3 years at Bath, I maybe lost 2 games of cricket. But it was one of those periods where, I mean, we'd get 280 for 3, and the other team would be 88 for 6 off their 50 overs, and it didn't really help that kind of limited over national knockout type cricket. It's good that it's changed now, because I was never a fan of that, bat 55 overs and you can have a draw kind of scenario. It was always rather dull.
Well, looking at our batting lineup on the day, you'd certainly say it was a lineup that was equipped to chase down a bigger score. You got JC up there with Alex Barrow, which obviously is as good of an opening pair as you're going to find. Staunce at 3 with all his experience, and then yourself, Lloyd and Statey, and sort of in the engine room, if you like. What can you tell me about their bowling attack and sort of how they approached coming at us in the second innings?
Well, I mean, I've never really been one to worry about, think about, or remember who people are and what they do and their reputations. It's never really interested me. And I know a lot of the time when we used to play cricket, we'd turn up and say, "Oh my God, it's this person. He does this," So it never really sort of clicked with me when people were talking about Alex Wharf. This, I think they threw it around that he used to play for England. I don't know whether he ever did.
I think he definitely played a few games. Yeah.
Yeah. So you've got some people saying, "Oh, they've got an England quickie," which kind of makes you a bit nervous, because, as you well know, I've never worn a helmet.
I was going to say, just to interrupt you quickly. I mean, you always carried 2 bags with you to games, home and away, and one of them had cricket stuff in, and the other one didn't have any cricket stuff in, and there was a helmet in neither bag. So for you, when you did face the quicker bowlers, did that ever go through your head, or did it affect the way that you played the game?
No, I think, like, in my whole life at Bath Cricket Club, and I don't know whether it is because we were Bath and because we were dominant through that period, that there was always that fear factor, I guess, or that respect that was given to us. But as you well know, and any Bath bowler would know, the way to shut me up or to get me out is to bowl at my ribs. I can duck and weave one at my head. I can hit anything full, but if it's in at my ribs, then I've got nothing. I've never been able to hook a pull. And I think the only game that came close to that was when it might have been in 2008, I think, when Thorbes was skipper, opened against Bristol. And Rudgy just bowled at my head. I don't think he liked me opening without a lid on.
I've been with you in that game, didn't I?
I can't remember. I think that was later. I think I was batting with Campbell that day, but it was on a typical North Parade snake pit of the time, where there were all those cracks.
If you're listening to this,
Gordon.
That view isn't shared by everybody. That's just his own view.
Yeah, it was always a snake pit down there in 2008. But yeah, he got one to jag off and it hit me. I think it was in the box actually, and Thorby came out and gave me some codeine, but didn't tell me it was codeine. So I then spent the next hour batting against Rudgy high as a kite. But he was the only bowler that ever bowled at my head. So I never really got scared about that. It never sort of played on my mind. And I guess I always had that confidence or arrogance of youth that, I'm good enough to get out the way of it or hit it. But then Alex Wolff, for whatever reason, decided to bowl round the wicket halfway down the track for the whole game. And I don't know whether it's because of that, because I mean, we got off to a relatively decent start, although I think it was pretty slow. But I was supposed to be batting at 4 that day.
I see Lloyd's above you on the card, which I guess wouldn't normally happen.
No, well, it did towards the end of my career. But yeah, so I was due to go in at 4. I think whoever the first wicket was, I can't remember, but Buss went in, and I just had a really bad stomach. And I'm sure it wasn't because I was nervous seeing Wolff bowl at everyone's head. But I said to Lloyd, Lloydie, I've got to go to the toilet, mate. Do you mind sticking them on just in case? And of course, as I'm sat on the throne, I hear this massive cheer go up, and it's like, oh no. So obviously, a wicket's fallen and Lloydie's gone in. So I've sort of strolled out, and as I've sort of strolled out and got my pads on, I thought, oh, I hope he bats for a long time now so he can see Wolff out.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, that wasn't the case. So I think we were 3 down, relatively low scoring. I can't remember what the score was when I went in, but
you're going out there at 62 for 3. So
yeah,
it's 62 for 3, but it's I wouldn't know which of the 2 openers was still out there, or perhaps JC and Baz have been the first 2 to go. But
yeah, the top 3 were out, and then I went in to bat with Lloydie for a while.
So it's 62 for 3, but it's 62 for 3 with JC, Baz, and Staunce out, which is significant because you're looking to one of those 3 to bat through. What's your mindset then going out there in terms of what do you do next, and how do you set about trying to chase down this score?
Well, I guess in my normal style, I never really tried to think too much about things. Just take it as it comes. But I do remember I had a new bat. So I mean, you probably remember I always had 3 or 4 bats in the bag, one for every occasion. And I can't remember if this was I'd been on a stag do and I ordered a bat whilst drunk, not knowing about it, and it turned up 3 weeks later. But it was a 3-pound 2-ounce Vantage, so it's a big bit of wood. And I'd used it there was a midweek game a couple of weeks before, and I think I got about 9. No, because I think we were chasing about 110, and we got them off 11 overs. And I got about 60 or 70 off about 30 balls with that bat, and I just swung and it just went. So walking in, I felt quite comfortable.
Had you used it since?
No, well, I think I had the day before we were playing Corsham and I only got 1 run. So let's not talk about that. But yeah, so I kind of felt confident walking in there that it was a dry and dusty one. So although Wolff was coming around the wicket and bowling at people's head, it wasn't quick.
I think one thing that I've sort of learned when I was at university, we used to play the first class counties in friendlies, and the sort of big name guys, the big name seamers, they would always do that. They would always just assume, well, they're students, they're not going to like it, so I'm just going to come and bowl. Actually, to be honest, most of the time, you're not at risk of getting out if you bowl like that. If you've got someone who is as skillful and as good as Alex Wolff undoubtedly was, it seems like a massive wasted opportunity to kind of puff your chest out, if you like, and say, right, well, I'm just going to come around the wicket. They won't be able to handle it. Did you feel at any point, uncomfortable out there against him?
No, I mean, as I walked out there without a lid on, I got a few comments, but I've been getting those all of my life.
Yeah, it's nothing.
Yeah, so not just about the helmet either.
Is it because, be honest, is it because you haven't found one that fits over that?
Yeah. I mean, part of it is when I wear a helmet, I look absolutely ridiculous. But it's also it's the same reason I don't wear caps. I don't like the visor. That means I can't see the sky above. It's just a weird eccentricity that I have, I guess. And it's why sort of towards the end I had to start batting in sunglasses so I could actually see. But yeah, so I got the few comments as I was walking out there, but I think because I knew pretty much 5 out of 6 balls were going to be at my head, you can set up for it, you can prepare for it, and then actually you're just waiting for that full one that you're going to try and drive. So I mean, it wasn't particularly intelligent of him if he was an England bowler, etc., because he's obviously seen someone without a lid and thought, I'm going to hit him in the head.
Yeah.
But because it was almost every ball, it's actually quite easy to set up for it. But he'd also set his field. So what I'd started to do is I got in and faced him for a few overs. He had a deep fine leg, a deep square, a deep mid wicket, and a long on.
As if you're ever going to take a shot.
Exactly. So when I was getting some of these verbals, I sort of said, "You've never seen me bat, have you?" I don't hit it on the leg side. So actually, what I had decided to do, because I think he had 3 in the ring on the offside.
Yeah.
I just stepped back to square leg and started cutting him over point, and he really didn't like it. So I actually started to get in his head, and yeah, he'd sort of say things to me like, "Why don't you play it on its merit, or why don't you hook and pull?" And it's like, you've got 5 people out there. Why do you just think I'm going to give you my wicket? But he kind of had this impression in his head that I was just going to try and hook him and pull him and get out to it, which I can't remember which one it was, but I think one of the openers had done that. So I think he just thought he'd catch everyone in his little trap. And I don't think he was quite prepared or would ever face someone just playing the silly shots that I had elected to play.
Well, it looks like that's probably JC who's fallen into that trap, because he's the only one who gets out to Alex. But yeah, well, I mean, obviously, so you've seen him off, but things, it's not as if it's smooth sailing. I mean, we lose Lloydie, Statey comes and goes pretty quickly, and we find ourselves 136 for 5 with 90 required, and Griff coming in, Griff. I spoke with Thorby about Griff in episode number 5 about the game the season before at Ealing, and just how amazingly skillful he was gloves. But he had the ability to really scrap and work hard and battle with the bat as well, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, he was very much a nudger and a nerdler. But he was so fun to bat with, because I mean, you know what he's like.
Yes.
And we were sort of just having a laugh and a giggle in between overs, and I think when he was in, I think, like you say, we needed 90, but I think we only had about 13, 14, 15 overs to get them, so we were way behind the rate. And I think that's probably where Sully sort of started to go wrong, because they brought their spinners on, and I've always fancied spin.
Just tell me, so I can sort of sit here and picture in my mind, standing at the non-striker's end and watching the way that you approach going after spinners. But can you just describe, how you tend to set up and how you attack spinners in your own way?
So I guess probably throughout my whole cricket life, it was, I've got shots I know I can play. I've got shots I know I can't play. Where's the field set? Where are my scoring shots? And I'm sure that's probably the same for most batters.
Well, do you know what, Matt? I think it should be, but I don't think it is. I think it's something that comes up a lot, actually. Is that I don't think batters have an understanding a lot of the time of what their strengths and weaknesses are. And as you said, you had some great strengths, but to be able to know your weaknesses and then have a plan to defend against that's important.
Yeah, and I think playing at a club like Bath, for me, I was always the guy in the first team that was nowhere near as good as anyone else, but I got runs. So I think I did that because I knew where I could score runs, I knew where I couldn't, and I didn't try and compete with the likes of you or JC or Staunce, who just had such a wider array of shots than I did. But I knew with spinners, if it's anywhere near pitched up, I can use my feet, I can get to the pitch, and then I can hit it. If you've got a long off but mid on's in, I can hit it. I can just use my wrist, hit it over long on. If there's a gap between mid off and cover, I can hit it through extra. So I always had these shots of wherever the ball is, I can use my feet to manipulate where that ball is and where I am, and hit it in the gap. But from what I remember, the leg side boundary from the beach end, I guess, if you want to call it that, the leg side boundary was quite long, but the straight boundary was relatively short. And I think I was probably in my 30s, I guess, when I just came down the track and hardly hit this shot. But I hit it onto the beach. And as it sort of went there, I had the first slip sort of swear, and sort of say he'd never seen anyone hit it that far before. So that kind of, and I'm sure he didn't mean it to do that, but that actually sort of gave me the confidence that, do you know what, actually I can do this.
That's the new bat, or are you taking credit?
I think that was probably the new bat. Yeah, it was well worth the 400 quid that I didn't have. But yeah, so that sort of gave me the confidence, I guess, and then I just sort of took a liking to the spinners.
Yeah.
I managed to manipulate the field quite a lot, and actually have that. And it was, like I said, it was a really hot, sunny day. So I think I just got them riled up because I kept hitting it where they kept changing the field.
Yeah, and obviously, well, I mean, you probably don't know what it's like because you're very much in the kind of Simon Marchant school of club cricket, approach, in that you sort of turn up and you have a nice time, but you're not going to get riled up by certain players and what have you. Whereas for me, if I saw someone come out to the wicket on the opposition that looked like you, with no lid and like stickerless bats and trainers on and whatever, and with your eccentricities, as you said, I think it would just slowly get me more and more and more annoyed. And I guess for them, having not seen you the season before, it must have been kind of infuriating, watching you kind of go about your business. But we get to this situation where, from a position of real peril, we somehow find ourselves, in a position where, we're looking like favourites to win the game. And the guy at the other end is Steve Griffiths. Can you talk us through his approach to the opposition quick bowling?
Well, I think it was, if he was on strike, he'd just try and nick it so he could get off strike. And I remember, between one of the overs, he said, "Oh, Mike, you're playing these guys really well, so I'll just let you take them on, and I'll take the spin on," kind of thing. Yeah, which was very kind of him. But yeah, I mean, he's more eccentric than I am, certainly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I mean, it kind of went from the pressure of the situation, because the crowd was quite big. They were certainly very partisan. It went from quite a pressured situation of, we need 90 off, 13 overs or whatever, to actually, I think we just started to have a bit of fun with it. And that pressure, for whatever reason, it just sort of leaked. And I was remembering the 2009 game, that, that last over with Davo and Kegsy. And it never really felt like it got to that stage, by a long way. And I think that's just because, when you've got someone as calm and cool as Griff down the other end, and, for whatever reason, I was just launching it for six all the time. It just kind of, I think it just kind of killed their spirit. With probably about 6 overs to go, it kind of looked like we had the momentum, I think.
Yeah, and in the end, I guess you look at the card. If you just look at the score, you didn't look at the card. You might say, well, they got there quite comfortably. But for you, having been at the club for a few years and knowing the history that the club has with the national, how special was it to have your day? Your big day in the national, because that's what everybody will remember you for. In 10, 15, 20 years.
Do you know it's a bit odd, really, and maybe I'm a bit odd. Well, certainly I am.
Well, goes
Yeah.
right.
But at the time, I didn't think anything of it. For me, it was just 94 not out. In the minibus on the way home, there was the usual atmosphere that we had because we had a really good team spirit back in those days.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess it kind of felt, pretty good for the rest of the week until training on the Thursday night, where Statey, and a brilliant skipper and a lovely bloke that he is, he sort of took me over to one side and in his own style sort of said, Mike, Alex Barrow's next week, so I'm afraid you're with the seconds. So yeah, exactly. So after that innings and that game, I got dropped the following week.
Oh no!
Yeah.
And Statey will definitely be listening because he is a massive badger, obviously.
Yeah.
And
well, I think someone pulled out on the Friday, and I did actually end up playing.
You snuck back inside. That's very
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I mean, I guess throughout my life at Bath, like you said at the start, I was in between the first and the seconds a lot. Which never really bothered me too much because it is just such a privilege to be in that Bath first team with all the history and the quality. But Statey managed that situation really well, sort of better than I think anyone ever has that I've experienced. And that was certainly one of his strengths, people management. He was really good at that. So although I got dropped, I didn't actually come away feeling bitter or angry. It was just like, do you know what? Alex Barrow, who was playing at Somerset at the time, I think, if it's a choice between me and him, it's not a choice, is it? So it's one of these things where it's like, I really wish I was playing, but can't argue with the decision. But it was quite ironic and funny.
Rob Maggs said on last episode that when he thinks back to that period of time, he said that he felt that you were probably the most underrated player at the club at the time, and he said that he himself, probably didn't give you the credit and justice that maybe you deserved. Did you feel that way at all?
I mean, there might have been times when I felt like that, but if I'm honest, like I said, it was almost sort of a pinch yourself moment when you're batting at 3 or you're opening the batting and behind you are people like Staunce. I don't think you ever batted. Oh, you might have batted below me a couple of times, but you've got people like you and Staunce and Lloydie and Statey and just a wealth of talent that the club had. And I look back on my career and my stats, and I almost scored 5,000 runs for the club and I averaged, I don't know, 44, 45, over those 150 games. So I did all right. And I think first team average was around about 33 or something like that. So looking back at it now, I'm just incredibly, proud and privileged and honoured to have played for Bath for as long as I did. I still remember the time when I knew it was time to quit and retire. I was playing with you in another national game against Bristol down at North Parade, and Rudgy was bowling.
That must have been the game I remember.
Yeah, and I couldn't see because my eyesight had gone, and I was squinting, and you were just down the other end wetting yourself.
Well, yeah, because you didn't have a lid on, and
no, yeah, exactly, yeah. So Rudgy's coming in bowling at me. I can't see it. I haven't got a lid on. And I think that might have been my last game, or certainly, one or two, because I always wanted to get to 5,000 runs, and I think I ended up about 100 short. But I just got to the point where my body wouldn't let me. But no, I don't feel that I was underrated. I mean, it's nice of Magsy to say that. I wonder how many drinks he had at the time. But yeah, no, I mean, it's just such an honour and a privilege to be able to say that I was a top 3 batter in the first team at Bath.
And the amount of people that have asked me to have this episode feature in the series probably goes to show how great of a knock it was that day. I think Sully, for as good a side they had, they probably missed an opportunity in both games. I think because they had us they had the foot on the throat twice, and kind of let us slip away. But a great rivalry. And I think listening back to the first episode, you just want to make sure that you don't sound disrespectful when you talk about another club, because whilst they did have a certain brashness to them that maybe we weren't used to, it's great high competitive cricket, and you wouldn't want it any other way, would you?
No, and mate, you and I both know if we were to be speaking to other people at other clubs about how they perceive Bath Cricket Club,
Yeah,
the same would be said of us. We played hard, we played fair, and I think it was the great thing about being at Bath is like you said, they had 2 opportunities in those 2 years and they should have won. Is even if I had got out, we still had Statey to come out, we still had Brownie to come in, we still had Kegsy to come in.
yeah.
We never felt like we were beaten until everyone was out, because we had so much talent. And that was one of the I guess it's a potential banana skin, because you think, well, it doesn't matter if I get out, there's always someone else. But the amount of times we pulled out when we were sort of 7 or 8 wickets down, and it looked for the whole game as if we were going to lose.
I think I can count on. I probably count on one hand. The amount of games where it got really close and we didn't get over the line.
Yeah.
In sort of not just in the cup but in the league as well, because like you said, we always just manage to find them. And maybe you just remember the wins better than you remember the losses. But I think how many clubs can say they've got someone like Joe Dorgan walking out to bat at number 10.
Yeah, exactly. And that guy was seriously talented.
Yeah, he was. He was. It seems like an age ago that Dorgers. Hopefully Dorgers, if you're listening, you're fitting well, mate. But it was great playing. There's so many great players in that era.
Yeah, and I think a lot of credit needs to go to the structure of the club as well. I mean, if you look at how they invested in, and there was always an argument whether the first team were looked after better than the rest, but the management structure, the team building that we used to do, and Statey used to do a lot, at training, whether we're all, going out on group runs, those kind of things, and the stuff that Rowie used to do in terms of building that team mentality. Other clubs just didn't have that kind of support and resource that we used to get. And so many times, like you said, we got over the line. A lot of that was just down to the unity that we had and cohesion that we had, not just as a team, but as a club. I mean, go back to that 2009 game, the crowd there was huge.
Yeah, and that's something that's never changed in the national. If there is, I mean, I highly doubt there's anybody from Blackheath Cricket Club listening, but forgive me for the following comments if you are offended. But I just remember the one thing that sticks out from the 2015 semi-final was what a wasted opportunity it was just for the growth of club cricket and youth cricket, because every single game that I can remember, of any significance at North Parade, you always get a reasonable crowd, but it swells after tea. People come down after tea, and then it seems like the atmosphere's there. And we played a semi-final at Blackheath, and there was just nobody in the ground. I mean, we took a bus of our own supporters, and there was just nobody there. It was kind of soulless, and it kind of took away from what should have been a great occasion. And the support, as you said, at North Parade over the years, it's it is special to be the one of the 11 out there on the pitch representing the club.
Yeah, and there's certainly memories that I'll have for the rest of my life. And you just can't buy that kind of stuff, can you?
You can't, mate. And I think obviously that's hopefully what we're trying to recapture in this series. And Smythe, I'm sure I speak for everyone listening when I say thanks for giving up your time as it is evening right now to tell us about the game. I certainly feel like I was there at the end of it all. And I can definitely sort of picture, everything that you were sort of describing. And, I think it was a brilliant knock, mate, and one that people still talk about 10 years on. So thanks for coming on. And for everybody out there listening, which, hopefully will be a fair few by now if this is grown, or if people are, still interested in hearing from, me in this lockdown period. We do have more to come. And next week, we have a very special episode. And it may degenerate quite quickly. We'll see how it goes. We might need a bleep track. But we're going to do an episode on captaincy. So we've got the current first team captain, Sam Mount. And then we've got James Campbell and Lloyd Davis joining me as well. So that'll be one to look forward to. But for now, that's all for National Knockout Classics, and we will see you next week.